Good morning. Yeah, so I can remember there was that time. Yeah, that'd be great. There was that time when I got separated. I'm sure there was a couple other times in my life. The other time that really sticks out in my memory as far as people getting separated was at the state fair, the New York State Fair. And it wasn't me, it was my sister. I've got two older sisters, so it was the middle sister. And it's one of those weird memories because I was young enough. And at the state fair in the food thing, like they have like different like nationalities, right? And so I just kept remembering that we found her in Switzerland. You know, that was just in my memory. And I think they had people on stage that were dressed in clogs and doing some different things. So it's just, you know, how you remember things. But I do remember it was very busy. My parents were very big on don't let go of each other's hands. And then we all got to where we were going, and it was one of those things where Mom took one of us to this restaurant, and Dad took one of us to this restaurant, and we were going to meet up. And when we met at the meeting place, Laura wasn't there. And you know, it was kind of like, I thought you had her, and then I saw my parents go crazy. You know, it is how, and that was whatever that was, over 20 years ago. Man. Even in our day and age, where there's just so much more fear and we're so much more aware of predators, you get separated from your kids. That is terrifying. It is a terrifying experience. We have a thing, and I just came back from a class on counseling, so this is not completely influenced by that, but separation anxiety. Familiar with the term? And I think our two kids are completely different. I don't know what it was, you know, just in the nurturing of the kids and just how it went. And Robert has always kind of been a daddy's boy, and Cassie was very conscious when Blythe was born. I don't think she realized how much of the connection she would have, that mother-daughter connection they would have. But she kept saying, I don't want to neglect Robert, but I also don't want to, because he is more, you know, aware of things and can be needy in different ways, I don't want to pay so much attention that I don't give Blythe all of the attention that he got when he was a baby. So I think she may have gone the other way, you know, to where she wanted to take care of every single one of Blythe's needs, where Robert at night, it was not 50-50, I won't give myself that much credit, but I was helping. I was helping, you know, with nighttime feedings and doing stuff. I think the first time I got up in the night for Blythe, she was 6 months old, you know, and Cassie was just intent in taking care of those things. And now there's some times that you take Blythe out of Cassie's presence, and she does not like that, okay? She does not want to be separated from Mama, especially when she's tired. You know, that's like, there's no hope for you. So you can console yourself if you've ever tried to hold that child here and she's been cranky, she was just tired, she just wanted her mom. It's not you, it's her. So kind of thinking about that is the other person in my life that's got separation anxiety is our dog, Lucy. And you know, some of you have had some of these animals. She's pretty good, because she's got Odie. We've got two dogs, Lucy and Odie. And so when we're gone, they have enough company. You know, we can come here and we can be meeting with the church for 4 or 5 hours. They're fine. They do all right. You know, we can go do whatever, you know, we go to the store, whatever we do. They're usually fine. They can 6, 8 hours. They'll be all right. But when she starts seeing us take our suitcases out and packing, I mean, we could be going to Camp Hunt. And be bringing them with us, but she doesn't know, you know, or even like just not like Cassie went to New York City last weekend and I went down to Virginia for the week for school. She turns into a nervous wreck. Now some of that goes to her history. We got her from a shelter. She's a beagle. We got her from a shelter, and the people there, we were getting the backstory. They said it was kind of a sad story. She was a gift to a child like a birthday gift to a child. The parents divorced. And just how things worked out was mom had the child most of the time and dad got the dog. But dad was a traveler. And so he would go on business trips and be gone 3-4 days at a time, where he couldn't exactly take Lucy with him. So he would put her in a kennel. And so since the day we had that dog, you try to put her in any kind of confined area, she doesn't like it. She sees us packing, and she does not like it. She gets nervous. Sometimes she'll start drooling. She'll start shedding her hair. Separation anxiety, right? We don't like to be separated. Now, we've been talking about sin, and in light of sin, we understand what sin does. Sin separates us. Okay, probably the go-to scripture on that is Isaiah chapter 59, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Surely the arm of the Lord is not too short to save, nor his ear too dull to hear. But your iniquities have separated you from your God. Your sins have hidden his face from you, so that he will not hear." So one of the big things, we've talked about the consequences of sin, the seriousness of sin. We cannot treat sin as a light thing. And that the huge thing that sin really is and does is it causes separation. Another scripture that we had looked at in the past is that sin leads to death. When sin is full born, it gives birth to death. And if you think about it, that is essentially the same thing as being separated from God. God is light, God is life. And if you're separated from the source of life, what do you have? If you're cut from the branch, from the vine, if you're cut off from the vine, you're not going to be able to bear fruit anymore. And whatever fruit you have on your branch is going to shrivel up and wither up, and the only thing it'll be good for is to be thrown in the fire. Okay, those are Jesus' words from John chapter 15. That's the analogy he gives. And so we understand then, as Christians especially, how important it is for us to be connected to God. How big of a deal sin is, because sin separates us from God. And how big of a deal Jesus' sacrifice and Jesus' blood is to us, because that washes away our sin. The things that would keep us from being connected to God, Jesus takes those things away. If you were cut off from the vine, Jesus has the power to graft you back in. And so that is a huge deal for us. But we know that even though Jesus does that, our sin still separates us from God on some level, okay? It might not be a deep-seated kind of eternal level, but it separates us from God. Oh, that didn't... there we go. All right. We have these different relationships. Luke chapter 10 and verse 27 is a scripture that you all know, okay? It's Jesus is interacting with the rich young ruler, and it's when they're asking about, or one of the lawyers. They ask him what's the most important rules. What are the most important commandments? And he says, it's to number one, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength. And the second one is to love your neighbor as yourself. And the thing is, we kind of see glimpses of three relationships there, right? There's the relationship you have with God. There's the relationship you have with everybody else, all of your neighbors. And within that is the relationship you have with yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. When you sin, you violate all three of those relationships. When you sin, you cause division in those relationships. You cause a separation in all of those relationships. We're going to start another round of small groups in mid-March, the end of March, and one of the ones we're going to do that we did a couple years ago is Financial Peace University. Okay, if you've never done a financial course, you should sign up for that course. It is great. If you have here's my little plug for it. If you've never had savings, if you don't have a savings account or you don't have money in your savings account and you want to see that happen, you should sign up for that course. Because if you follow some of those basic principles, It's amazing how you can make some little changes that make a big difference. Well, one of the scriptures that the teacher of that course, Dave Ramsey, harps on, one of the principles he says is from Proverbs 22:7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is the slave to the lender. Now, one of the principles, one of the ideas he takes out of this is he tells you as a student, do not lend money to anybody that you care about. And you're like, wait, what? Really? This is a Christian principle? It says, listen to me, don't lend money to somebody in your family. Don't lend money to somebody that you consider a friend. If they need money and you can give it to them, give it to them. But do not lend them money because of this truth that's in the Proverbs right here. The borrower becomes a slave to the lender. So as soon as you borrow money from me, our relationship changes. Now you're the borrower and I'm the lender. Now, in every part of our relationship, you owe me. And it's hard to get away from that. Because if that's how it starts, we can have different attitudes about it. Let's say it's a small loan, $20. Okay, not a big deal, $20. Well, that's what you think, not a big deal. So time passes and you never pay that $20 that you assured me you would pay me back. And you know, well, it's been a year. Rob hasn't asked about it. It's only $20, no big deal. We're good friends. All is forgiven. But what if I'm not thinking the same way? This person's stingy. I only lent them $20. They can't pay that back to me. You know, even just the other day, I know that they lent somebody else money. What's up with that? Why didn't they pay me back first? So we can see where that lending can cause some issues in those kinds of relationships. Instead, I should just say, here, no, don't worry about it. This is a gift to you. You need it. God bless me with it. Take it. So it's a good analogy because when we sin, we are basically becoming indebted to somebody else. If you sin against somebody. And so the terminology fits perfectly because in the same way that if you owe me money, what can I do to the indebtedness that you have to me? I can forgive it. I can forgive your debts. And so if you sin against me, you need the same kind of reaction from me, or you hope that you would get it. You need forgiveness from me. And so if you need forgiveness, then we could say the same is true, that you owe me something. You are in my debt in some way, shape, or form. And so just as becoming borrowers or lenders to one another changes the dynamic of our relationships, when we sin against one another, it changes the dynamic of that relationship. Because if I sin against you, now I am indebted to you in some way, shape, or form. And vice versa. Let's think about some of the ways that this could work out in some other senses. All right, here's a kind of maybe a stereotypical example of a teenager who has some good parents, given some leeway and freedom by his parents. He can go where he wants to go, do what he wants to do, even stay out late, doesn't actually even have a curfew, okay? That within this relationship, the parents say, here's what we want from you. If you're going to go out, we want you to tell us where you're going to go, who you're going to be with, and what time we should expect you home. Okay? So then the curfew can kind of be figured out. If the kid says, I'll be home at 3 a.m, then the parents can say, how about 12:30, kind of thing. So this is the relationship they have. It's worked well. But one day, this young man decides that the thing that he wants to do and the place that he wants to go and the people that he wants to spend time with probably won't be approved by mom and dad. And so instead, he lies. Instead of being honest with them about it and maybe hoping for the best, he says he's going to be one place with somebody at one time and be home at midnight. And he goes someplace else with some other people. And inevitably, that thing happens that was unexpected. He's not able to get home by midnight. He comes in at 1:30. His phone died. He couldn't call home to make up some other excuse or tell another lie. So mom and dad are there. We were worried about you. And you said you were going to be with Johnny, so we called Johnny. We called Johnny's parents because you said you were going to be in. And we woke them up. And they said that you weren't at their house and that you hadn't been at their house. And so what we have is a young person who has sinned against his parents. And we can see the repercussions of that. We can see how that drives a wedge in their relationship. There needs to be forgiveness, right? This young man needs to earn or not earn. Somehow, he needs forgiveness from his parents. And let's say they're very forgiving parents. Maybe they say, okay, here's what's going to happen is your privileges are going to be revoked. You can't do what we can't trust you any longer, right? And so now you can still go out, but you have to tell us where you're going to go, and you always have to be home by 10 p.m. Now you've got a curfew. Now there's rules. This person is going to have to pay some kind of penance. They're going to have to live in this and be faithful to this and be honest with their parents and be home every time they go out by 10 p.m. in order to earn back the trust. Something has been driven. Now, how does it affect the relationship? And it affects both sides too. Because you could do that perfectly for 3 months and maybe then the parents say, we're going to move that curfew back to midnight. You've proven yourself. And what's the young man going to think? There might be some doubts. Do they really trust me? Are they going to keep checking up on me? Even if you earned it, even if that's the attention that you deserve. You've put, by sinning against them, now he's put himself in that awkward position of, where is our relationship? Where do we really stand? Can I believe what they say? Because of whatever's happened and whatever's gone down. So sin separates us. Sin drives a wedge between us and other people. And it messes with us too. Because sometimes we do those things and then we look at ourselves and we look at that mistake we made and say, I can't believe that I did that. I can't believe that I did that thing. Pride can come in the mix. I thought that I was better than that. I thought that I wouldn't ever make that mistake. Can I trust myself? And so we can start to have some issues with the relationship that we have with ourselves and feel ashamed. And as we read in Isaiah 59, 1 and 2, that your iniquities have separated you from your God. Your sins have hidden his face from you so that he will not hear. When we sin, a lot of times shame comes with that. And our initial reaction is not to cry out to Jesus, is not to run to God's arms for forgiveness, but to be harder on ourselves than God is. And to say, I can't even talk to you right now, God, because I'm so low, I'm so ashamed. Why would God want to hear from me right now? Why would God want to hear my prayers? Or why should I even open the Bible right now? And so we drive that wedge between us and our relationships with God. So what we're going to talk about today is how community, we'll look at this example in Genesis between Joseph and his brothers, and we'll see kind of some of the effect of their sin. And how community can really, the things that community can do to combat sin. So in Genesis, I read as a scripture reading this morning from Genesis chapter 42. So if you're not familiar with the story of Joseph, I'll give you a little bit of backstory. Joseph is born, and we learned a little bit about Jacob. Jacob had several wives, but there was one that he loved more than the others. Okay, and she initially could not have children, and it was later on after Jacob had children with other wives and their maidservants that finally, with Rachel, the one that he loves most, he's able to have children. And Joseph is the firstborn of Rachel. So Joseph is very special to Jacob, and Jacob doesn't really hide that. So Jacob has the coat of many colors. He gives it to Joseph. And about the same time, Joseph starts having these dreams where, interpreted, he's basically saying to all of his older siblings, and we talk about how the firstborn of everybody they've got the most rights, and they've got the biggest inheritance. So you go down the line, and here we have Joseph, child number 11, son number 11. He's down on the totem pole, right? So here he comes, and he gathers his mother and his father and his brothers, and he says, I had this dream, and I was king over all you guys. And so they didn't really like that very much. And Joseph was a little bit of a goody two-shoes, and so he tattled on his brothers a couple times. And so they conspired, because they had their sheep where they weren't supposed to have their sheep. And so they see him, they say, you know what, we're sick of this kid. We've got a soundtrack today. Sick of this kid? Let's get rid of him. They actually conspire to kill him. Some of the older brothers say, they calm things down, and let's not kill him, let's just throw him in the cistern. And then from there, some of the greedy brothers see some travelers nearby and say, hey, we can spare his life and make some money if we sell him as a slave to those Midianites. Oh well, so that all goes down. Joseph ends up in Egypt. Joseph follows the Lord, stays close to God, does what he's supposed to do, lives by faith, and wherever he goes, he rises in the ranks. Okay, he has some he ends up in prison, not his fault, but he rises in the ranks of prison. He does some things. God gives him the ability to interpret dreams. The Pharaoh has a dream that needs to be interpreted. Some people, one of the people in jail that he had interpreted say, hey, I remember this guy, he's good at it. Brings Joseph in. Joseph gives the only reasonable, all of the wise men that Pharaoh has on his staff, they have no clue what's going on. Joseph says, here's what your dream is about, and here's what you need to do. And so instantly he gets promoted. He's like big head honcho, and what's going to happen is there's going to be a famine in the land. But Joseph sees that in Egypt they're going to have 7 years of surplus. So he says, what we need to do is we need to store some of this and put it away and keep it for when we have those 7 years of famine, we'll have enough to feed everybody. We won't be starving. And in fact, we'll have so much that other countries and other people will be able to come to us and buy our food from us. And we can supply that to them and help them out so that they don't have to be suffering and dying. And so that kind of sets the scene. Is famine comes, and here we pick up in chapter 42, and Jacob is saying to his sons, what are you guys doing sitting around? We're all starving. Go out and get some food. You heard the rumors. You heard that Egypt has food. Saddle the camels, get on the donkeys, whatever you're riding, and get down to Egypt and this is our only hope to survive. But don't take Benjamin, okay? He's my only son left from Rachel. He's going to stay here. I'm not going to let him risk his life. And so they go, and Joseph meets with them. He does not reveal himself, but when they leave, they have what they paid for and the money that they paid for. So if they paid 50 pieces of silver for a certain amount of grain, what they found when they stopped was that not only did they have the grain they paid for, but the 50 pieces that they paid for it. So then they start to get nervous, and that's where it really is interesting in verse 21. It says, surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded for us for his life. This is in chapter 42 of Genesis. But we would not listen. That's why this distress has come on us. So almost more than 20 years has passed. Okay, they don't recognize Joseph. 20 years has passed, and as soon as things start to go really bad, they immediately look back to that sin. And that's a cautionary tale, right, of what sin can do to you. As soon as things go bad and it looks like their lives are really in jeopardy, they all look at each other and say, we messed up big 24 years ago when we threw him in that cistern, we sold him as a slave. And now God is punishing us for that. Because however the last 20 some odd years has gone, they didn't really feel the wrath of God. But if it's coming to their minds so quickly now, it was there, wasn't it? It was gnawing at them. It was eating away at them. How can we do that? How how can we fix this? How can we make things right? And they just never knew the answer. They were getting away with it up until now. And then finally now, they're starting to see what's going on. All right, turn over to Genesis 45. We'll read a section here in Genesis 45, starting in verse 16. So, I don't really know why Joseph did all of what he did, but basically they're going back. He says, he keeps Simeon in prison. He sends the rest of the brothers back. They say, you can have Simeon back if you bring Benjamin to me. So the brothers go back, and you can see how their sin affected their relationship with their father, because they explain everything to him. They say, look, this guy, he's going to keep Simeon forever. They might even hunt us down and kill us all because they'll think we're spies if we don't bring Benjamin back. So we have to bring Benjamin back to him. So the father's like, whoa, you already took Joseph from me, and now you took Simeon from me. And so you can see the wedge that's been driven between the sons and their father because of the sin that they committed. And now you want to take Benjamin, the only kid I love left. He's a real compassionate father. Now, he didn't really say those exact words, but you get the idea here. Is what? And so he finally, they're desperate enough. He sends Benjamin. They go. Joseph plays another trick on him, puts a silver cup in Benjamin's bag, and everybody's like, "Oh no, what was it?" And finally, Joseph reveals himself. He can't handle it anymore. He gets too emotional, and he lets them know when they start again saying, "It's because of what we did to Joseph," and he becomes so overwhelmed. He says, "I'm him. I'm Joseph." And so in chapter 45, verses 16 to 28, I'll read that. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had come, Pharaoh and all his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this, load your animals and return to the land of Canaan, and bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." You are also directed to tell them, "Do this, take some carts from Egypt for your children and your wives, and get your father to come. Never mind about your belongings, because the best of all Egypt will be yours." So the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them carts, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he also gave them provisions for their journey. To each of them he gave new clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 sets of clothes. And this is what he sent to his father: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other provisions for his journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they were leaving, he said to them, "Don't fight on the way. Don't quarrel on the way." I thought that was interesting. So they went, I guess they were quarrelsome people. So they went up to Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph said to them, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, "I'm convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." So Joseph has forgiveness in his heart. And what he tells his brother is really incredible. When he talks to them, he says, "Look, what you meant for harm, what you meant to hurt me, for evil, God used that for good. God had good intentions. God sent me to Egypt ahead of you so that I could interpret this dream, and that we could save this grain, and so that I could save our family." And so Joseph saw the big picture. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. He was able to really see that big picture. But how is reconciliation really brought together? And it's through the reconciliation of community. It's not just about Joseph saying, "I forgive you guys." It's about Joseph saying, "We're going to be a family together. We're going to be together again. We're going to live together. We're going to be together." And community is so important when it comes to this whole battle against sin. Because sin separates us. So if we think, well, how can I combat sin then? A huge way that we can fight against sin is to not be separated, is to be a part of a family, to be a part of a community. I want to we've been doing some of this natural church development stuff, and I just want to quickly show you a couple of the charts that are in one of the things. We're going to study some of this stuff in the first couple of weeks in February. But here's some of the sins that we can get involved in. And let's say Joseph's brothers are dealing with this, envy. And so there's a couple of ways that we can deal with envy. You can conform, because so in envy, you're recognizing somebody has something that I don't have. And I don't like that because I want it. So if you're the person that's on one end of it, you can conform. Oh, I don't want people to be jealous of me, so I'm just going to be like everybody else. Or you can become an egalitarian. And that's kind of the stingy side of it. Like, you shouldn't have more than me. We should all have the same amount. Okay? But this, how do we deal with sins is really enlightening, that the best way to deal with a sin is not to say, you shouldn't be jealous, don't be jealous anymore. Or if, say you were dealing with pride, if somebody's a proud person, saying, be humble, you know what, they know that they're supposed to be humble, or they most likely know. Just telling them the answer is not fixing it. So what we're looking at here is taking the positive energy, not to be too, like new agey, right? But taking the positive energy that God is supplying, the good that God is supplying, and saying, how are we going to use that? So for these guys, their identity is an important thing. God makes us each unique. He gives us each our identity. But they didn't like the identity that Joseph had, and they were going to punish him for it. But how can we fix that? And so we see the biblical model, and that is this idea that seeing the big picture. There's one body, but there's many parts, and all of those different parts are needed to make up that body. And so in that we understand that everybody is needed. And how we should supply our energy that we have towards identity is in gift-based ministry. So basically, I really I've got Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 28 at the top of the one slide, and I love what it says. It says, he who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work doing something useful with his own hands, that he will have something to share with those in need. So think about how that negative thing can turn into a ministry. Okay, I heard about this woman. She was addicted to drugs and would steal $2,500 worth of merchandise every day from stores, and then pawn it off to get about a quarter of that so she could support a $500 a day cocaine habit. After she got help, after she got cleaned up, you know where she thrived as a job? Head of security for a department store. Why? Because she knew what to look for. She knew what to see on camera, the signs that somebody was, even the best of shoplifters. She knew all the tricks of the trade. So she was able to use that negative thing and turn it into a positive. And in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28, it says, yeah, if you've been stealing, steal no longer. That's a given. That's important. As Christians, don't steal. But he's saying, but use your hands and do something good with them. And be generous and give to others. And so that is kind of amazing thing, is that probably the most generous people are the ones that sometimes, have some of that darkness in their past. Okay, so we can kind of see how some of this works. And how we can combat sin, and how community can really help us in that struggle. So when it comes down to it, sin separates us, and we get separated from the community. Sometimes people just like sin more than the community. Okay, so your sin separates you, you know it, but you make the conscious decision that, you know what, I'd rather just stay in this sin than be a part of things. Sometimes people prefer the world to God. Other people feel ashamed. They are unworthy to be with God. They're unworthy. The church is going to judge me if they know about what I've done. People feel like outsiders in the church. And you wonder, will people miss me if I'm gone? And there's some doubts and there's some questions. Some people really are outsiders in the church because they kind of like to stay on the fringe and not really have to be accountable to a group of people. Okay? thing is, we need community. And we need to understand that you might be on the outside feeling like, I'm this terrible person. I've done these terrible things. And so my sin has separated me from God. My sin has separated me from the church. But I don't really belong with you guys because I've done these bad things. But the thing is we've all done those bad things. And that doesn't make them right. It just makes us all in the same playing ground. You know, it levels the field in a way, that we're all unworthy. But God has given us this design because God knows in the whole cosmic battle against sin and death that we need community. We need each other. We need to have a relationship with Him. And some of the big verses, we won't look at them all, but because we're kind of running out of time here, but I'll just read the one that I like a lot. It's Galatians 6. It says, brothers, if someone is caught in sin, you who are spiritual should restore him gently. Oh, okay. I mean, when I'm sinning, I have responsibility. And it goes on, it says, but watch yourself that you not be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Each one should test his own actions then and take pride in himself without comparing himself to somebody else. For each one should carry his own load. So there's two things there. I'm responsible for my own load, but yet we're supposed to carry each other's burdens. And if I am a sinner, I think it goes both ways. I shouldn't be proud and think that I'm more than I am. Think that I'm holier than I really am. But when I'm in sin, I shouldn't be so proud to think that I'm beyond God's grace or forgiveness. And that's what we do a lot. It's pride that makes us think, oh, you know, I can't be forgiven by those people, or they're going to look down on me. That doesn't sound like pride, but that's a form of pride. Because you're putting yourself ahead of the community and ahead of your relationship with God. But there's a couple of key things in there. Carry each other's burdens. Restore that person gently. So if I'm in sin, I have some responsibility to that sin, to shed it, to find good things to do with my hands or with my life or whatever. But there's also a communal responsibility. That when we see somebody that's stuck in sin, how can we restore them? How can we restore them gently? How can we help them carry their load, their burdens? And so there's that aspect of it too. When we have that community, that togetherness, and then you're faced with temptation and you see the big picture, then you can see that. Do I really want to do this thing? Do I really want to go there? Do I really want to say this, knowing what this is going to do with my relationship with God? Knowing how this is going to hurt my friendship? Knowing how this might affect the relationship that I have with my church? If we have such a strong community and so much love, then we're going to be wrapped up in that. And those things, those opportunities, when they come along, they won't be temptation to us anymore because we'll be so focused on what we have. We'll have the contentment that we talked about last week. This supplies encouragement, direction, vision, goals, accountability, love, people who will restore us gently, people who will speak the truth to us in love. We can see how that kind of community would really help us prevent sin in our lives. It's the kind of community that I wouldn't want to be apart from. Man, I was not here on Wednesday night. I was in Virginia. And whenever I miss a Wednesday night, that week seems like it's 7 weeks. And I'm thinking, and I think about that, and then I think, oh man, yeah, I wasn't there last. Wait a minute, I was there on Sunday. And it just seems like it's been so long since I've met with all of you guys. It seems like so long. I'm not trying to be mean. For those of you who don't come to whatever midweek thing we do Wednesday night or a small group thing, I honestly don't know how you do it. Like my body starts to go with withdrawal. Like I haven't seen the church. I haven't gotten to meet with the church. And it just feels weird. I was like, man, it's so long. And, I wonder what people look, they look different or what. So how do we get community? Okay, we'll finish here. Thanks for bearing with me. I think I got started a little late. That's it. I don't have Robert just come up. You need to stop talking now, Dad. So how do we get community? And I just want to encourage you, it's not something that you have to dive in head first with, okay? Because we're sensitive about relationships. Hey, you've all been a part of a community or in a relationship that you got hurt. So we all can kind of hold back a little bit. You want to get involved in community. You want to get involved. You want to have a better relationship with the church family because you know that that's going to help you in your Christian walk. You know that's going to help you fight the sin that's in your life because you're going to have that. You can just dip your feet in for now and see how it feels. Let your body get used to the temperature before you get in all the way. But that's all it really needs. One phone call, one invitation, have somebody over for dinner, go out with somebody. Just try to make that your goal. If you don't really feel like you're really connected or you'd like to be more connected, break down one wall. Do one thing. Join a small group. We're going to start small groups in a couple of, like I said, in the middle of March. Be a part of one of those things. I have seen incredible things happen in small group Bible studies. All right, I've seen people open up and talk about depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, eating disorders, things that they had never shared with anybody. They felt comfortable enough. And I'm not saying if you have something like that, you have go to a small group, you have to share. I'm just saying that level of community is reached and people feel comfortable doing that. I've seen people confess sin, people talk and confess inadequacies, people share about pain in their life. And it's therapeutic. It's helpful. It's helpful in our fight against sin. The number one comment, since I've been in small groups, we've been doing small groups in some shape or form here almost since I've gotten here. The number one comment that I've heard from people that have been a part of a home-based Bible study is this: I feel like I'm more a part of the church now. If you want to feel more a part of the church, go to somebody's house for 6 to 8 weeks in a group of 8 to 10 people and study the Bible with them. And you're going to gain a sense of community. A great thing to do is give somebody a ride to church. Laverne and Jarrell used to live right next door to us, and for a while they didn't have any vehicle. I mean, living next door was one thing we had, but hey, every Sunday, every Wednesday, we've got 15 minutes here and 15 minutes home. And I'm not just going to sit there with my mouth closed the whole time, right? And neither are they. Automatic relationship building. Hey, we've got a lot of people that could use rides. You've got an extra space in your car. Pick somebody up and build a relationship, build community. Sit next to somebody here at church, okay? Here's the Pipers and Becky, and well, they're all Pipers, but she could come in and sit with her kids by herself and survive, right? You get to handle that. But having Marge next there to help with Natalie or help with Allison, with whatever, that's helpful, right? Find somebody that's got kids. Sit with them. Help them out a little bit. You know what? We deal with them the other 7 days of the week. And I'm not saying I don't love to sit in the church with my children. I'm just saying if you wanted to come by and sit with them and occupy their attention for a little while, that'd be a huge blessing to me. And you're going to build a relationship with them. And you know what? I know how it means to people when a little kid runs up to you and recognizes you enough to hug you. Oh man, that melts people's hearts, right? You could have that. Just little things. Come to Bible study. Come to the ladies' stuff. It's going to come up again. What do you got? February what? Did you have a date yet? 22nd. Saturday, February 22nd. Come to the building. How many ladies usually come? 8? There's more than 8 ladies here at the part of the church. Come to that. Build community. Be a part of that. Winter Fun Day is coming up at Camp Hunt. Go to Winter Fun Day. Support that. Go sledding with the teenagers and some of the other kids. Okay? You can go sledding. You're not too old. Okay? All right, some of you are too old to go sledding. But you can go and you can make hot cocoa and you can do some other things and you can build community. And same thing. Those teenagers, they're going to see that you put that effort out when they see you on Sunday. I know teenagers are scary to some people, but they'll come and they'll talk to you. In a couple of weeks, we'll go on Saturday and we'll do the rescue mission walk. It's a mile walk. Okay? You can walk a mile. Walk with me. Walk next to somebody. Again, you're going to walk a mile with somebody and not talk to them and not build that relationship. Serve together. In March, we've got the children's clothing exchange coming up. People that serve in the clothing exchange. Do you do that, Ernie and Linda, when you guys help and fold clothes and stuff, are you silent the entire time? No, right? There's community is built in these things. Serve together. Every Sunday, we're going to have some coffee and some donuts. Help clean up. And you will get to know the people that you're helping clean up and that kind of thing. So we could go on with different examples. But you get the idea. And all of those little things, you've got this sin over here that you're struggling with. You're like, how can I combat it? Sometimes it's not just about, I have a problem, I say mean things, and I'm sarcastic, and I cuss, and I swear, or I feel pressure from the people at work, and I don't feel like I share my faith enough, or I even sometimes deny Jesus, or we sometimes look at those things and try to attack them head on. Okay, I need to stop saying those bad words. I need to start standing up for Jesus. But some of the approach just needs to be foundational. You need to be a bigger part of this community. You need to be more involved. You need to have less separation and more community with us and with God. And what will follow is your life will just start flowing and things will just start clicking. And you'll find that you're saying less of those mean things and you're standing up for Jesus more. Because you care less about what those people think about and care more about what these people think about. So I want to encourage you, take one step, think of one thing that you could do to break down one barrier, build one relationship, one friendship within the church, and see how that helps you live more righteously. Sin separates us from God, it separates us from each other, it messes us up internally. And so how can we combat sin? Community. Community, community, community.